How's it going, everybody? Tim here, back with another video. And in this video, I wanted to talk again about seasonal work. In my last video about seasonal work, I talked about me working in Yellowstone National Park for a summer. And in this video, I wanted to talk about the summer I worked seasonally in Alaska. Now, I've always wanted to go to Alaska. It was on kind of my travel bucket list. I know it's on a lot of other people's as well, but I felt that I would never be able to go to Alaska. If I did go, it would be probably years in the future, maybe when I was retired or something like that, because I just knew on the amount of money I was making, I never would have had enough disposable income to pay for a round trip ticket to Alaska and back, and a week or so of accommodations, and then the price of expenses and all the things I wanted to do while I was there. I just knew I would never been able to afford that. So for most of my life, the thought of going to Alaska was just a dream. However, once I discovered seasonal work and I started doing seasonal work, I ran into a lot of people who had worked seasonally in Alaska. And it was kind of one of those things, we'd all be sitting around kind of talking about other seasonal jobs we did. And the people who worked in Alaska always like won. In life, like even when you're not intentionally doing it, you're kind of always trying to one up the other guy. And, the people who worked in Alaska like always won, that round, because where could you say you worked in the U.S. that would kind of beat Alaska? So I would get like super jealous, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go work seasonally in Alaska. So when the time came up where they would be hiring for jobs in Alaska, most of the seasonal jobs in Alaska are in the summertime, because that's just when they get a huge influx of tourists coming up there, and they need people to fill all the jobs that spring up because of these tourists that come there. When it came time, a few months before summer, I hopped on my favorite website for seasonal jobs. I mentioned this in my last video, coolworks.com. I will leave a link in the description box below to it, and you can actually search by jobs in Alaska. So you don't have to sift through a bunch of other jobs from other states, other countries. You can actually search by Alaska, and I will leave a link directly to the Alaska page in the description box. But I went there and I found, once again, like I mentioned in my last video, there were just a plethora of companies that needed seasonal workers. Like I said, there are so many tourists that come to Alaska in the summer. So many new jobs open up. And these are jobs that are only open for 4 or 5 months out the year, because as soon as fall and winter come around, people start leaving Alaska. All the tourists go back home. There are some people who aren't even tourists who come just to work certain times of the year, then they go back for the winter. Like, nobody wants to be in Alaska for the winter. So a lot of these jobs shut down for most of the year. They're only open 4 or 5 months out of the year. And what happens here is that these companies, when these jobs come back available during the summer, they need all new people, because it's hard to find somebody who just consistently wants to work 4 months out of the year. So very few of the locals work seasonal jobs, unless it's like something that's right down the road, is convenient, or it's a job they really like. Most of the locals, most of the people who stay in Alaska year-round, they have year-round jobs in Alaska. So, excuse me, there is just a huge amount of seasonal jobs that open up in Alaska in the summertime. Anything from hotels, bars, restaurants, ships, like a lot of those, fishing shows that you see on television about Alaska, those jobs open up. I think they're pretty hard to get. But just think of anything that you want to go to Alaska and do as a tourist or as a visitor, and probably the people who are going to be running those activities and those jobs are going to be seasonal workers. So, this ranges from anything from, tour guides, zip line people, amusement park people, fishermen, just so many different jobs. I can't even think of them all. You go on Cool Works, check it out. You'll see all the jobs I'm talking about. But there's just a ton of jobs. And the beauty of it is, especially when you're working in Alaska, they realize that you're probably going to be coming from the lower 48 or another country. So they realize you're not probably going to have transportation, and you're going to need a place to stay. So pretty much all these seasonal jobs in Alaska offer some form of room, if not room and board, and they're pretty good about getting you from the airport to where you need to go. because they realize pretty much everybody is going to be flying in. So lots of the jobs are like, hey, you fly into Anchorage Airport. Even some of the more remote places were like, you fly into Anchorage and we'll charter you a smaller plane to get you out here. Other ones would, just pick you up from Anchorage, or, but pretty much all of them are good about getting you transportation to the job site. And when you're there, they usually all provide a place for you to stay. And in a lot of cases, there's some form of your meals or something you're taking care of. Either you can eat at a discount in the restaurant that's part of the place where you work, or they have meals provided for you. So I really like that about Alaska. This is kind of standard in general in seasonal work, but some places aren't that open about getting you transportation to the place. Some places don't have room and board, but in Alaska, they're pretty sure you're going to need it. So, all you kind of have to do is get there. If you can get the plane ticket to Alaska, and it's typically, I think it's Ted Stevens Airport in Anchorage. If you can get there, which these tickets aren't that expensive for like a one-way ticket if you book well enough in advance. I think I didn't know when I was going to be coming home specifically, so I just booked a one-way ticket. I think it was like $200 or something like that. You spend your $200, you get to Alaska. Everything else after that is pretty much taken care of. You don't have to worry about anything but working. All you have to do is get to work. Everything else is taken care of. And me personally, I worked from mid-May to mid-September, so I was in Alaska for 4 months. I opted to work at a small little roadside lodge called Trail Lake Lodge. There was a restaurant, a lodge, and then across the street there was a little motel. I opted to work there as a head housekeeper. I mentioned before that when I work seasonally, I clean hotel rooms. I'm a housekeeper, room attendant, whatever you want to call it. So I had a little experience by then after doing a couple other seasonal jobs. So I got to be head housekeeper. So I was basically in charge of the whole housekeeping department, which wasn't that big because it was a pretty small roadside lodge and hotel. I think total we might have 15 employees. But I chose to work there. I had some other job offers. One of the things I really like about seasonal work is pretty much all the applications you put in. If you fit what they're looking for, and most of these jobs aren't picky, like I said, because they have to get these jobs filled, you're pretty much going to get a call back from most of the places you put applications in. So I put in a bunch of applications because I said I'm going to Alaska this summer, and pretty much all of them called me back or emailed me wanting to set up an interview. Excuse me. I ended up going with Trail Lake Lodge because the owner, when he called me, I really liked talking with him. He seemed like a real down-to-earth guy. He went over a ton of, the things that were important about the job. And I also liked they explained a lot about the job in the area on their website. One of the things you'll find is that sometimes when you're looking at these seasonal jobs, sometimes the websites aren't very in-depth. And so you have to wait until you go through the whole process and get hired. Then they send you a new hire package. And then they kind of explain lots of things to you. At Trail Lake Lodge on the website, I pretty much knew everything I needed to know. Then after talking with the owner, it definitely eased my mind because I was traveling all the way to Alaska. So I really wanted to know everything I could know about the area. It was a super cool job. Really enjoyed it. Like I said, it was in a little small town called Moose Pass, Alaska. There wasn't even a stoplight. I think there might have been a stop sign, maybe one. It was like an hour and a half out of Anchorage, and the biggest thing in this town was the lodge and the hotel. There was like a school and a library, and the post office and a store across the street, and the hotel and lodge. That was pretty much it. And I spent 4 months there. Really enjoyed it. Just some real down-to-earth people. The other 14 or so people who worked there, most of them were pretty cool. We got along good. And one of the things I really liked about working there, and as well as working seasonally in other places in Alaska, I'm sure it's true as well, there was a list on kind of the bulletin board, and a lot of the activities that people do when they come to Alaska, just normally. A lot of things people want to do in Alaska. We were able to do these things at a steep discount because the people who run these activities wanted us to be able to go on them and talk about them to guests. So, for instance, I got to go on a 5-hour wildlife cruise where we went out into, I forget which bay it was, but, went by, you saw glaciers and this beautiful scenery, and I saw whales and seals, and all these different birds and goats and just all this wildlife. And then we had a all-you-can-eat buffet on Fox Island. It was just great experience. Typically, it's $150 per head. We got to do it for $20. So that's one of those things that would have been a big expense for me if I had just was on Alaska as a regular tourist. $150. But $20, boom. I was there, and it wasn't like we got kind of a diminished package. No, we were on the boat with other people who had paid $150. We got the same experience. That prime rib buffet, all-you-can-eat prime rib buffet we had on Fox Island, like we grubbed out. I think those of us who paid $20 ate way more than the people who paid $150. We grubbed. But just things like that. Actually, right next to the lodge was a float plane place, and a lot of times they would come over when we were at work and be like, hey, we got a spare seat, any of your employees want to go? I personally didn't get a chance to go, but some of the other employees went, and for free they got to go on these float plane trips around to see, you know, sceneries and mountains and things that were typically $100 to I think $200 per head. They got to do it for free. And so on this list, there were just all these activities that, you know, just going out on fishing boats, other things like that. And then also, too, the people who, the locals you'll meet know a lot of the people who run some of these things. So a lot of times they'll be like, oh, hey, you want to go out fishing or do whatever? Let me call my guy, let me call my friend, and they'll set you up to go out on these things sometimes for free. So that is definitely one of the perks of working seasonally in Alaska. Not only do you get to spend a lot of time in Alaska and just really feel immersed in it and do a lot more, but a lot of these activities you get to do at a discount, or you get to do them for free. And I just thought that was super cool. You know, I tell people all the time, if you're thinking about going to Alaska, try to work it out that you can get a month or two, or if possible, the whole 4 months of the season, and look into going there seasonally and working. It's the best way to do it. Like I said, all I had to pay for was my ticket there and my ticket back. I ended up, when I left, I went to Vegas. I treated myself to Vegas. I blew my whole bonus. You got, where I worked, Trail Lake Lodge, you got an end of the season bonus. I went to Vegas, blew my whole bonus. But, so my return ticket, I think my plane tickets and all were like $350 total. That's pretty much the only thing I had to spend, other than the little money I spent on activities and hanging out and things like that while I was there. And so basically I got to spend 4 months in Alaska, and I got paid for it. You know, I got to do all the things I would have done if I had traveled to Alaska, and I got paid for it. Like, you know, in the employee housing where I was at, it was connected to the hotel. So I would see these people come in, and I know how much money they were paying per night for a room in the motel. And me, I had my own room in employee housing. I just marveled at the fact that they charged, I think, like $10 a night for room and board where I was working. I just marveled at the fact that for $10 a night, I got pretty much the same experience that these people were getting, paying $100 or so a night. You know, I'm at the same location, which the location was beautiful. It was on a lake. There was mountains all around. I'll put some pictures at the end of this video so you can kind of see where I worked and some of the scenery. But I was just like, you know, for the small fee that they charge me for employee housing, which they take out of my check, so I never even you don't even realize that you're paying it. I got to have kind of the same experience at this beautiful lodge as other people had, and they were paying all this money. So I definitely recommend, if you're thinking about doing Alaska and you have a summer off, or you have a few months off, you have some vacation time, doing seasonal work is a great way to do it. And I promise you, I know a lot of people, you know, as I mentioned in my last video, you don't do seasonal work to get rich. The money is typically somewhere around the minimum wage or just a little bit higher. The thing is, once you get there and you realize that you're doing it just as a way to go and experience a place, you don't think about the money. Yeah, I wasn't making much money, and I was making beds and scrubbing toilets, but this never bothered me. I like cleaning hotel rooms anyway, but it never bothered me. I never looked at it that way, because if anybody came there and kind of looked down on me, I just knew, like, okay, you're spending all this money to be here. I'm getting paid to be here. I'm doing all the same things you want to do. You know, when I get off work in 6 hours, I'm going to go hike, you know, take me a couple hours hike and hang out with my friends, you know, in a beautiful location, top of a mountain, a lake, you know, just It didn't bother me. One of the things about seasonal work, you know, if you're afraid, oh, I don't know if I can do that type of work, it's kind of beneath me or whatever, you won't think about it. You'll just enjoy being in the location you're at, especially if it's somewhere beautiful like Alaska. And, you know, you'll look at the people who, you know, travel the normal way as just weird. You'll look, you almost look down on them. It's like, what? You spent $4,000 to come to Alaska for a week? I've been here 4 months. Didn't cost me anything. And I did want to say, like, real quick, like I just mentioned, the work days really weren't that long where I was at. I worked 6.5 hours average, something like that. I could stretch it to 8 if I wanted to, but I mean, and all I did was, you know, clean hotel rooms, water flowers, dust rails, super easy work, some painting, a little light maintenance. Pretty much all these jobs you're going to get seasonally, none of them are, you know, hard, labor intensive, really jobs. Like, these are jobs that they're pretty, you know, pretty easy, you know, jobs, and they're great for just getting in there, doing your job, then going out and experiencing Alaska for the rest of the day. And on your days off, you're free to do whatever you want to do. You know, there are some people who drive there. There's typically some locals you'll meet around there. They have cars, and they're more than happy to take you, you know, out or show you some of the sites. They love it. You know, this is what they live for: new people coming in and them showing you around and showing you the sites. So, once again, if you're thinking about going to Alaska, look into doing it seasonally. If nothing else, jump on CoolWorks, click the link in the description box, and just check it out. See what you think about it. And if you have already been kicking around the thought of seasonal work, maybe the thought of going to Alaska and some of the cool things you can do, you know, will really iron that ideal into your head and make you want to take that step further. So I've been talking for almost 20 minutes here. I'm going to stop. If you have any questions about seasonal work, please ask me them in the comment section, and I will get back with you. Had a couple people ask me some questions on my last video. I thought that was super cool. I've mentioned before, seasonal work is something that really changed my life and has allowed me to see places in America that I probably never would have got to see. So I recommend it to anyone. Anyway, I'm Tim. Thanks for watching. Talk to you later.